This is the Fix Your Sciatica podcast. So total motion release, TMR, what is it? You might have come across it when you're searching for a physical therapist, a movement specialist, chiropractors. What and how does it help sciatica pain? And so these questions you're probably thinking, and these are the questions that I was coming across this treatment principle early on in my physical therapy days. And today's guest uses these principles in his program to treat folks dealing with sciatica pain. And we've known each other for maybe like a year or so. This episode has been a long time coming because I wanted to be able to interview just even more experts to help you listeners overcome the pain that you're dealing with. So today I have Dean Volk, physical therapist and just sciatica pain expert. Dean, it's great to see you.
Great to be here with you, Ashley, and thanks for this opportunity to share what I'm doing.
Yeah, and the honor's all mine. I remember as I was growing the I Fix Your Sciatica brand, I remember early on in the days, you were actually in the sciatica space itself, working with folks pretty much all throughout the world. And I was just really excited that I think once you joined my email list, I said, oh my gosh, great, Dean has reached out. Let me go ahead and just say hi and introduce myself. And it was great because once we started chatting, we really hit the ground running and we both understood that we're in the business trying to help people deal with this pain. And it's always really great to get connected with other professionals whose sole purpose is to do that. So listeners who may not have heard about you or met you yet, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Well, I've been a physical therapist for 32 plus years now. I've owned 3 different clinics, owned a cash concierge practice, pretty much been a director of physical therapy in the clinics that I have been part of previous to ownership. So been around the block, been working with professional athletes, been working with mom and pop shop type things, everything from youth sports to geriatric rehab. So most of my practices and everything that I've done is all focused around orthopedics. And over the last 15 years, I've taken a great liking to and affinity to sciatica clients because those honestly were the clients of mine who I struggled with the most. I used to think they used to struggle because my perspective was if they would just do what I say, they would be fine. But that only worked for about 20% of those clients. And I figured, the other 80% just weren't listening to me until I realized, wait a second, 80% of my clients were not getting better who were dealing with sciatica. So over the past 15 years, I've developed programs. I've been tweaking and working with, like you had mentioned, total motion release was sort of the foundation for my new thinking as far as it goes with sciatica. And over the past 6 years, I've sort of I've sold my practices. I've done a life transformation. We moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. We sold our practices, and I've been consulting online now, people with sciatica all over the world since 2018.
Amazing stuff. I really appreciated you saying, percent of patients got better if they just listened to what you said and the other 80% didn't. And you asked yourself why. I think it's important for practitioners, whether it be physical therapists, chiropractors, like anyone who's dealing with people who are managing their pain, if the majority or they're folks who are not experiencing relief, rather than just trying to go down just one specific rabbit hole and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, you ask yourself, why is this working? And challenge your thought process. I think the way that the current the system is that you're having these practitioners who are just kind of burned out by the system. And as a result, every person who got into physical therapy wanted to help people. But then there was a point in time at some point in their career where they just got so burned to the point where they said, let me just go through the motions. Let me go ahead and just stick with these things that I know that are kind of effective, but I don't necessarily have the energy to ask, why isn't this working or why is this working, to dig a little bit deeper, right? And so that is how I got involved with the pain management spectrum was be able to say, was me asking myself, well, why isn't this working? I remember even for hip and back pain, it was like, okay, well, I have these 15 different exercises. Okay, if these patients actually did these 15 different exercises, they should actually be better. But they didn't, right? I would get to the point when I was working in the insurance field, patients would exhaust their benefits. They would their benefits and they're like, well, I'm still not any better. And then I said, well, you're just a lost cause, or, well, you didn't do what you did. And it's like, we tried to game the insurance system. It's like, well, you can never try to beat like a big multi-billion-dollar organization like that. So then that's when we're asking why. And so
Right.
I'm very thankful for you to go through that journey and where you're at today. So let's talk about total motion release. You said it's one of the like big principles about it. And I had the opportunity to do a little bit of research and going onto the website and learning something about the methodologies. But from your perspective, tell us a little bit more about it and how did it change your perspective on pain management?
Well, great question. It was about 16 years ago now, I believe, 15 or 16 years ago. In order to keep my license in North Carolina, I had to take continuing education courses. And this course, Total Motion Release, by a gentleman by the name of Tom Delonzo Baker, was going to be teaching a course about 40 minutes from my home. And I thought, hey, I can save money. I don't have to fly anywhere. I don't have to stay in a hotel. I can just take this course. So honestly, I had no idea what it was. And Tom started the course off in a way that almost had me walk out of the course, because he said, hey, anything you've ever done in physical therapy, I want you to throw it out because I want to retrain you. And I thought, wow, you're younger than me. Who do you think you are to challenge what I know? I mean, at the time, I thought I was doing pretty well. I had 3 clinics of my own and we were doing well. And to be challenged like that, I just thought, oh my gosh, I had been to some courses where they were just far out, very strange. And I thought, oh no, here we go again. But as we started going through the course and Tom was talking about the different principles, I, being someone who is not shy, was always raising my hand, challenging him, because like he said, it was totally against everything that we had ever taught. Because instead of dealing with somebody's painful shoulder, if let's say they came in with a right shoulder problem, he was looking at the rest of the body going, okay, what can we do to the rest of the body that can affect that bad shoulder in a positive manner? And the way I liken it now is, I always tell my clients, if I went to a doctor and told him, hey, right here, this is killing me, what can I do for it? And the doctor said, Dean, I want you to take your hand, pound that spot 25 times, 5 times a day, come back to me in 2 weeks and tell me how you feel. Most of us, I mean, anybody who would have any type of liking to me would look and go, Dean, are you really going to pound yourself in the area where you're painful 25 times, 5 times a day and go back? That's crazy. And yet when I started to take a step back and look at what we're trained in physical therapy, when someone has sciatica down the right leg, what are we doing? We're focusing on that right leg, trying to loosen it up, trying to stretch it, trying to massage it, trying to nerve glide or nerve floss it. And most of our treatment is focused on, hey, how do we get the pain out of that leg? Now I look at that and go, wait a second. If this is sore, why do I want to keep pounding on it? What else can we do? What other parts of the body can we work on that will have a positive effect? And so after taking the course, honestly, when I got back to my clinic, I thought, yeah, I was a little leery because it literally is 180 degrees opposite of what I was used to. But when I started applying some of the principles to my sciatica clients, it was like I went from a 20% success rate up to about a 70% success rate overnight. It was one of those head scratch. I just went, what is going on? And that's what started my journey on going, hey, you know what? Doing all the generic exercises that you can find on YouTube or on Google. Seriously, just go onto Google and type in generic sciatica exercises, look up at the pictures. And if you see everything that you are doing as a treatment, because that's what you were given, know that you've been given a generic sciatica treatment approach. And that's what spun me to go, okay, hey, we've got to find a better way.
This episode is brought to you by the Patient Advocate Program. Are you tired of not having support between your rehab sessions? Introducing the Patient Advocate Program, and we're focused on your recovery, and we're offering you 24/7 access to a doctorate of physical therapy. Stop waiting in line to be seen and stop spending hours doing long exercise programs. Imagine being able to get all of your care delivered straight to your phone. Best of all, it's affordable. We believe everyone deserves top-notch relief without breaking the bank. So why wait? Take control of your health today and visit ptpatientadvocate.com and book your free call with our experts. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that. I think from a principle standpoint, 100% of what I agreed with when I was just looking at through some of the, I guess, like testimonials or demos was this this test retest model where it's like, okay, and I think this is one of the big challenges, and especially when it comes to me. Like, actually, I've been still dealing with this pain when working with physical therapists, chiropractors, and all these other people. And it's like, I'm doing all these stretches, but they're not doing anything. And when, you go look at their exercises, okay, it's the same exercise you see on Google. Those exercises are great. There definitely is a place for them. However, I think where the art in pain management is to be able to say, okay, here's point A. This is you doing at point A. You do this thing. How do you feel as a result of that? Like, is it working? Like, we have to see, is it working? And I think especially when it comes to pain management, what's really interesting, and I find this in the majority of my patients now. Obviously, there's Urson Religioso, Dr. E, who's up in New York. He talks about these fast responders and slow responders, but the majority of people who are responders, when you're dealing with an active state of pain, if you do something, we should be able to get a pretty good idea of whether or not it's working. So that was one of the things I really appreciated. And the reality is that if you are a patient or a person in a group of people at a clinic, the clinician you're working with might not necessarily have the time nor the opportunity to be able to say, hey, Dean, do this exercise. How do you feel as a result of it? Let's see if it actually helps me make it better. And I remember learning about that type of treatment in clinical. I said, wow, this is an entirely new way to take care of people. And the second part, and I appreciate you bringing this up, is kind of like this whole body approach, right? And 100% agree. A lot of people, it's like, okay, well, my practitioner has been having me do sciatic nerve block. Well, if your sciatic nerve is already really, really hot to begin with, trying to stretch that hot nerve out, okay, maybe it might give you a little bit of temporary relief. That those muscles are just like, fine, you want to stretch me out, I have really no choice, so I'm going to relax. But trying to make a muscle relax involuntarily is only going to make it come back with a vengeance, right? And so being able to look at that, and so when it comes to that whole body approach, I think this is really intriguing, because I would like to know from your standpoint, or if they explained it in the seminars, where it's like, okay, why would we want to look different part of the body to address this pain that we're dealing with from a sciatica standpoint?
From my perspective and the way I look at it, might be a little bit different than the way Tom does, but what I look at is anytime the body has any type of tightness, stiffness, soreness, pain, discomfort, any type of abnormality, the natural response of the body is to compensate for itself. And I always use the example of, everybody has seen somebody walk around on a bad sprained ankle. Their head, neck, and shoulders are bobbing and weaving, and they're all out of balance, right side versus left side of their body, because there's pain in the ankle, and the muscles around the ankle tighten up to protect so that there's no further damage, which means those muscles are not functioning normally, which means every other part of that person's body is now compensating for that ankle so that they can function with as minimal pain as possible, but function as normally as possible. And it might not look normal because they're bobbing and weaving, but every part of their body is involved in movement now and function now, compensating for that ankle. So what that does, it causes imbalances throughout your body, right side versus left side. So if you can imagine this pulling here and this pulling here, now you have added physical stress and tension going on through the body. And not only that, that extra physical muscular tension and stress is going to be absorbed in the area that's most susceptible. So the ankle area is now going to be absorbing all that extra tension and stress, which means it's not going to be able to focus on healing. Now the body's basically just fighting against itself. So what I see as far as total motion release is going is, hey, you know what? If your body is out of balance and you've got things that are stressed that are normally not stressed, how can we calm those down so that the body can actually focus on healing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's like in the presence of some sort of restriction, whether it be soreness, pain, tightness, weakness, whatever, the body needs to make up for it somewhere, right?
Right.
And so as a result is that we need to be able to address those imbalances, those asymmetries that, now granted listeners, that asymmetries kind of happen in life in general. Like the majority of you have your heart on the left side of your body, but there are a few folks who have the heart on the right side, right? And so our heart doesn't sit right in the middle of our chest, and the same thing. It's like the way that our bodies are some asymmetry. So it's not to say that asymmetries and imbalances are a bad thing. They become a problem when they are a problem, when you are extremely out of whack. And so I appreciate, especially from that analogy, it's like, your ankle's back. So let's talk about the after hearing your description, it kind of sounds very similar to, in a way, what's great, and you probably noticed this as well, Dean, is that once you learn these principles throughout your career, rather than just like, okay, here are the facts, I'm just going to hold on to it, you start looking at, okay, well, how do I see this applied to the other principles that I've learned, right? And I found it to be interesting because this concept of asymmetries, sensations, and looking at another part of the body which might be linked to, say, your sciatica pain, it got me thinking about professional trains. So there's a book called Anatomy Trains, Thomas Myers, and he wasn't a physio, but he ended up breaking down kind of like the anatomical fascial connections, and it ends up becoming extremely granular. But what's really cool is the fact that it was a kind of general consensus is the fact that if one thing is not operating efficiently, the rest of the body does have to take on that strain or that extra load. So it's really exciting to be able to say, like, here's this information, but how do I see this get applied? And I see this a lot in the people that I work with, is that, yeah, there are going to be some sort of asymmetries. And one of the things I've noticed recently, especially when people are coming to see me, they're like, Ashley, I've been dealing with this pain for a while, and I've been doing PT and doing all these things. And I'll say, just take a step away from the camera, let's see what we're dealing with. And recently I've noticed that a lot of people have a pretty significant shift, as in like their shoulders are shifted away from their hips, whether it be towards the side of the pain or out of the side of the pain. And I found it to be so surprising that a lot of these clients are coming in saying, well, no one ever told me about this. And I remember in my training, which is like the Maitland and McKenzie model, which is like, you listen to the patient, we found the things that make them feel better. But one of the big things was like, if they have a big shift, if they have that big asymmetry, let's correct that first before we do anything else. So, okay. So let's talk about how this relates to sciatica, right? I know that you have applied these principles plus your years of experience into really amazing programs for the clients that you're working with. When it comes to sciatica itself, like how do you see it, and what are your treatment approaches in regards to making that feel better?
Gotcha. Great question. Basically, I focus everything I can on initially the imbalances that people have right side versus left, because I know with those imbalances, like I mentioned, you have all the extra physical and muscular strains and tension and pains. And I can give an example. When my wife had her initial bout of sciatica out of the blue, nothing was helping her. We couldn't get her into a comfortable position. When I taught her how to balance out her shoulders, because she was having a lot of tension in her neck, where a lot of people carry tension, when we were able to balance out her shoulders, she reported and said that her sciatica significantly decreased, like 60 to 70%. And that was just by doing simple arm movements to balance out the imbalances here. So that led me to go, okay, hey, you know what? We need to look at all parts of the body. And yes, obviously, if you're having sciatica down your right leg and you're trying to lift your right leg up, you know that that is going to hurt. But if you lift your left leg up, if it's pain-free and you don't have any tension in your painful side, hey, let's see what happens when we work that good leg. And I've been shocked. I'm not shocked. Well, actually, I still get shocked at times when someone can't straighten out their right knee to put their heel on the floor to begin with. And then we work the left side of the body, just doing leg lifts. And we go back to that right side and they look and they go, I can put my heel on the floor. And then they actually can lift their foot up 6 to 8 inches off the floor without causing that pain that was there before. It's awesome to watch people's faces when they just go, how did that happen? I've been called Magic Man and Witch Doctor and everything else just because of the weirdness that it seems until you understand the principles of, hey, you know what? That side is locked up. But when we work the side that's not locked up, guess what happens? Not only are you doing something that's comfortable for the body, which relaxes your central nervous system, the tension in your body eases, but it also has a carryover effect to the painful side, where the painful side now, you can move it better with significantly less pain. And that happens on a daily basis. I love watching people's faces when I have them test their trunk rotation and they're really tight and sore, but they're good over here. So we have them work their good side a bunch of times. Then we have them go to the bad side and they're like, hey, I can move that now. How did that happen? And so that's what my major focus is on. I always tell people I have a 3-pronged approach to my sciatica relief clients. And actually, any of my clients who I would see outside of the sciatica world is, number one, I want to get their body balanced first, because I know a balanced body is in an optimal position to heal no matter what the underlying cause is. And then once the body's balanced, that's when I start working on stability exercises, because I don't want to try to work strengthening or stability exercises while somebody's out of balance, because I don't want to reinforce those imbalances. And that's one area that I'm trying to get PTs to go, look, core stabilization is awesome and is needed for our bodies. But if you're doing it while a person is out of balance, you're just reinforcing the imbalances and you're going to have to break that eventually. So the 3-pronged approach is, hey, let's get you balanced, let's get you stable, and then let's slowly get you back into your normal activities to make sure we don't trigger off the pain again. So I hope that explains what you just asked, because I sort of went a circle there.
No, it's great. I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think obviously I resonated with you because you work with clients with dealing with sciatica, but you said something that I found to be extremely powerful is you went in and said, hey, let's see what happens when we do this. And we're going into, we'll say both you and I, we've had extensive experience working with folks dealing with sciatica. Yes, we know a lot of information, but every person that we're speaking with is an individual person. And so for us to go and say, all right, you're doing sciatica, these are the 10 things that are going to be helpful for you, is a huge disservice for the patients and the clients that we work with, right? Absolutely. So we're going into it as a period of, from a point of curiosity, right? If we can go and from a point of curiosity, really, really open up our minds and allow us to actually do some of these things that patients couldn't even think of, right? And so I really appreciate that. You answered another question that was popped up in my head. I was like, well, what are what do you think the mechanisms are as to why this works? And you said a couple of different things. You said, one, it relaxes the nervous system and that there is carryover onto the other side. And what's really interesting is the fact that there's research that actually says if you have an injured limb, say your left leg because of sciatica, if you train and strengthen your right side, that strength and movement actually carry on over. Like, it's great because we've seen that research and it exists, right? And so not only are we providing from a pain management point a safe environment for the nervous system to move, but we're also training those movement patterns that will further reduce those asymmetries and those imbalances. So I really appreciate you saying that. Another thing, especially just from that analogy of saying, okay, straight leg raise is really painful on their painful left leg, but is not painful on the right side. If we do, say, 10 straight leg raises, let's see what happens. And they do it, and then they're able to do 5 pain-free leg raises on the left side. What's really cool is the fact that when you're doing something like a straight leg raise, your entire trunk has to stay active when you pick it up, right? And so what's nice is I'm also suspecting, and I've seen a couple of videos on the website as well, is that if you can create a safe environment, the body moves much more efficiently. But if you're doing something like a leg raise, your trunk active, and now your trunk is active to allow that other limb to move a little bit more freely as well. So it really kind of goes into the core stability standard. I'm 100% agreement with you. If someone's out of balance and you're working a lot of core stability exercises, then you're really missing a large piece of the puzzle. It's kind of like if you were driving a car and for some reason you had like a flat tire and your car is just driving up against the sidewalk. And core stabilization exercises in that scenario is gripping the steering wheel tighter, where the actual answer is to turn your car away from the sidewalk so you're not driving into it, right? And so I appreciate you sharing with that, and your green-pronged approach. It's great. I think it's important for us to follow specific principles, and allows us to, one, have a standard of care, but also number two, when we have the standard of care, it allows us to be able to, in a way, deviate or explore outside of it and go back to our core principles. But there's always something that we can fall back on, and it really helps us create more of a process. And I think that was one of the challenges I had as an early clinician, where I didn't really have the principles and process. So every single course that I went to, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, well, this group of people said this. Well, how am I going to implement this into my practice? I took to SFMA. I'm like, here's this 37 item piece. How am I going to find the time to do it? And then notice that as I've grown as a clinician, it's like, okay, taking all these courses, how do I implement this into the current principles that I'm working with? So I, again, appreciate what you're sharing with us today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you know what? As an early clinician, we prided ourselves in having these handouts pre-made for clients. They would actually sell sciatica exercise pads. And when someone would come in with sciatica, we'd rip the pad off, show it to them. We'd have the glides, the pelvic tilts, the bridges, the press-ups, the Williams sweat. We had everything on it. The problem was the exercises necessarily weren't bad. It was just that we never tested them to see, okay, is this person more a flexion bias or an extension bias? Are they, which of these exercises actually work for this person? It was sort of like, hey, this is what a sciatica client does. And it's like, well, there's so many different causes and reasons for people having sciatica. Everybody responds to pain differently. That handing out that generic sheet, even though we were fully hoping, and the whole intention behind it was to make things more streamlined and easy for patients and us. But like I said, when 15 to 20% of your clients are getting better, it's time to stop and go, maybe they're not the problem. Maybe what I'm doing is the problem. So yes, totally what TMR has done, or what total motion release has helped me realize is, hey, you know what? We can test and retest, and we can make it very scientific each step of the way. Because if someone's not getting better from an exercise we're giving them, why are we increasing the weight or doing more reps or holding it longer? Why don't we look for an alternative exercise that actually helps them? So,
yeah, I'm a big fan of pushing the easy button, right? And so sometimes I'm thinking, man, this is way too hard. Like, why? How can we make it a little bit easier, a little bit, in a way, simpler, right? So, so this podcast is all about taking action, right? And so if we're looking at your core principles applied with TMR as well, we're looking at balance stability exercises and slowly getting into normal activities. For listeners today, 3 action steps that they can do that fall in line with your principles of the balanced body stability and slow return to normal activities. So
you sort of cut out a little bit there. I missed the actual question. Sorry.
So the question is, based off of those principles, what are like 1 to 3 action steps that the listeners can do today that will get them one closer to feeling better?
Gotcha. 3 things. All right. So number 1, if you're doing if you're doing any exercise that is painful for you, stop right away, because you want to avoid further pain, because if you cause pain, that's going to cause further compensation in your body, which is going to throw things out of balance. So number 1, if it's painful, don't do it. Number 2, If it is painful on one side, try to do the exact same exercise on the opposite side and see if that helps. And if it does, forget that if it helps. What you want to do is work the opposite side and see how that feels. If there's no problem with it, continue working the opposite side and then go back and retest what was painful before. And a lot of times you'll be shocked that you can either move further before pain. Pain is less intense. So that's principle number 2. Principle number 3, anything that you know that triggers your pain, whether it be sitting for more than 10 minutes, walking, standing, whatever triggers your pain, do one of 2 things. Either try to avoid it or figure out a different way to do it so that you're not causing more pain, which will cause more imbalances, and you'll just be piling on more problems for yourself.
Beautiful. We talked about total motion release and its principles, talked about your principles as well. So for the folks who are actually trying to, say, work with someone in person, right? They're not located out in Southern California, you are, but they want to work with someone in person, right? What's the best way for someone to find, say, like a total motion, a TMR practitioner, and how do they know that they're actually going to be good?
That's a great question, because thousands of people have taken there's 3 level of courses that Tom teaches. So the best way to find a TMR practitioner is to go on the Total Motion Release website. And I believe there is a Find a Practitioner site there, or a link there. The big thing you want to look for is, have they taken 1, 2, or 3 courses? And then you want to call them and interview them to know. For me, if someone is not practicing it every day, they're not going to be proficient in it. It's just, it's taken me 15 to 16 years to put together my program in the way it is. And I still tweak it here and there when I learn something new or I see patterns in clients that I need to shift with. So try to find somebody who's been doing it for a while and solely uses that as their guide in their treatment approach, if you want somebody who really does quote unquote TMR.
Very cool. And then let's talk more about the cool work that you're doing, right? Yeah. What kind of programs, or how do you help people, and how do people touch with you?
Well, I help people all over the world. I've been blessed to be able to just be a online sort of a consultant coach now to people. I own a business called Sciatica Relief Now, and if you look up Sciatica Relief Now online, that's me. That's my website name. That's my Facebook group page. That's my Instagram. So Sciatica Relief Now is how you can find me. And I have different online courses that people can take if they like to do things on their own. But we're noticing that most of the time people do much better when they're coached or they have some accountability within the course. So we offer group coaching opportunities, one-on-one coaching. I have 2 different coaches who are very proficient in TMR and also have their own little bent on things. So they and I do things a little bit differently, but the overall principle and the overall results are pretty much the same. And I can proudly say that I no longer have a 20% success rate, but we are in the 95 to 98% success rate with our clients. And typically those are clients who have failed 3 to 5 other treatment approaches before coming to see us. So the longest standing client, or the longest sufferer of a client that we've helped so far, is 63 years. And I'm always looking to beat that, but it's kind of hard because not many people deal with it for that long and stay sane. So if you've been dealing with sciatica for longer than 63 years, I would love the challenge to try to beat the record of what we have right now of a 63-year history that literally within a month, he was walking his neighborhood. He was just shocked at how, actually, if it was after the first 2 or 3 exercises, that he noticed he was 80% better than he had been in 63 years. So we take pride in doing what we're doing simply because we've been working at it for a while and we're watching people's lives change. And that's really what it's all about. Getting people to start living their lives again without that fear of, oh no, how many days am I going to suffer because I went to the store for 25 minutes? So getting people back to marathons. We've put a couple of professional rowers back. It is an absolute joy. And I always say it's my passion. And my wife goes, it's not your passion, it's your obsession. So if you're looking for somebody to work with, I would love the opportunity to be challenged by your case and help you get to where you want to be.
Awesome. Dean, thank you so much. For listeners, if you didn't get a chance to write that down, I'm going to go ahead and put the link into the show notes today. Dean, really, really cool stuff. I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with the world.
Ashley, I appreciate the opportunity to, and thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you got some help from today's podcast. And for more info, check us out at ifixyoursciatica.com. Have a fantastic and pain-free day. No patient-therapist relationship is formed by listening to this podcast. We are not providing medical advice, and all information should be confirmed by a medical provider.